For more than a century, Carhartt has represented the very best of America. Hard work, resilience, authenticity, and pride in a job well done. Few people understand that legacy better than Tony Ambroza. As Carhartt's chief brand officer, Tony helped guide one of America's most iconic brands through a remarkable period of growth while remaining true to the values that built it in the first place. Today, Tony serves as the chief growth officer at Real Truck, but his fingerprints remain all over one of the country's most beloved brands. On this episode of Great American Summer, we're talking with Tony about the people, principles, and purpose behind the enduring power of Carhartt. Please welcome Tony Ambroza. Tony, thanks for joining me.
Happy to be here. Nice to meet you, Jay.
Director of Marketing for Under Armour during their heyday, and then you moved to a brand that has become synonymous with American culture, Carhartt, and your title there was, to be honest, mind-blowing. Chief Brand Officer during a period when Carhartt became unbelievably relevant in American society. I can't wait to talk to you about it, but if you wouldn't mind, I'd love for you to just sort of give me the pathway and, share
Sure.
with me a little bit about how that all came about.
Well, it's not hard to describe or I guess tell everybody about the pathway because it simply was led through curiosity and passion. I was lucky enough to work at great places. Back in the heyday of theme restaurants, I was at Planet Hollywood All-Star Cafe, having a chance to work and learn and understand what the good and bad that comes with that success story, and then the fall afterwards, and then learn from some of the greatest marketing minds I've ever encountered at Nike, and work with a lot of really really amazing people that I ended up being able to bring some of which to my days at Carhartt, and some of them have also joined me in my current adventure at Real Truck over the last 5 years. Nike was going through an interesting time because I was there from 99 to 2005, and they were no longer the rebel. They were the big bully on the block by then, but still going through transformative times. And then the Under Armour opportunity was too good to pass up. $200 million business on a meteoric rise pre-IPO. Kevin Plank, so compelling, so convincing. No matter what you said or did back then, you sit down and you meet with him and you're like, okay, I want to contribute to this effort. I want to contribute to this cause. And I got to work again with really, really amazing people, passionate people for 5 years. And it was a pretty meteoric period of growth, 200 million to well over $1 billion in sales when I left. And then the chance to work at a brand like Carhartt, the chance to lead it. I didn't get to lead a brand until I joined Carhartt in 2010. And it was one of those opportunities of a lifetime, but I won't lie to you. There were a number of folks that I had worked with in my previous roles who believed in me, but they said, Tony, do not screw that brand up. It is as pure as the driven snow. Like nobody's ever, kind of messed it up, but that's what makes it so great as an opportunity. And it really was. But to be honest with you, moving to Michigan in 2010 was not a popular thing. My wife is awesome. We all have, key partners in life, I guess you could say. And my wife is certainly the most important one of all. And she believed in it, even though she did ask me a few times, everyone's leaving Michigan and we're moving to Michigan. What's going on here? Right? Because it's easy to forget now, but the auto industry was going through some really tough times after the Great Recession. It was all about learning. It was all about curiosity. It was about building a partnership and deep, level of trust with the founder's family and the fourth generation CEO, Mark Valade, who I still give great credit to today for all of the amazing leadership he continues to give to that brand and business. And the ability to build a team that really understood, the opportunity and the mission and delivered on that and drove to meteoric heights during that period as well.
So tell me what the different responsibilities or mindset or, how you think through taking a brand from 200 to over $1 billion in Under Armour to Carhartt, where you sort of, I'm guessing, have to be a little bit more careful and probably have a little less room to make mistakes.
Yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it, Jay. So, the Under Armour team, and one of the things that made Kevin an amazing entrepreneur and builder at that time was that he didn't overthink things. He was like, let's just start executing and going, and we'll learn on the way, and we'll get better, and we'll figure it out. But go, 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 and that's what we did. And it was all about driving execution against focused areas, though, too. So, we focused on a couple of things really well. We had to focus on, continuing great product expansion, focus on, telling great, campaign stories. Steve Batista and Todd Montesano and some of those guys did a lot of great work with media buying and strategy there too. And then I got involved. It wasn't what I was originally hired to do, but out of necessity and my experience from my prior lives, I got involved in the retail front that they were driving at that time, and basically helped spearhead the efforts around building out all these retail shop programs at Dick's Sporting Goods and then other partnerships. So I was really thrust into that role because I was the one that had the most experience in working with retail partners. But prior to it, I told them, I go, at Nike, there was an army of people who did these programs. Like I didn't do it. And they're like, well, figure it out. I'm like, okay, we will. We'll figure it out. And that we did. And, we screwed up some things. We got a lot of things right. And thankfully, that strategy allowed Under Armour to succeed at places like Dick's Sporting Goods for a long time because the genius of it all, I like to tell people, is the consumer doesn't know how big you are. Only you really know how big you are in the street, of course. It's your size in the eyes of the consumer and really your legitimacy is really dependent on how you show up. And that's what Kevin taught me and others in the way that he wanted to show up at Dick's Sporting Goods and be louder, prouder, bigger, stronger than even the big heavyweights like Nike and Adidas. And that's what the brand did, and did it to great success. But that is a sprint, and the sprinter's pace with a young family and a wife. Eventually, my wife was like, "No mas." We started to look at opportunities and explore things that were a little closer to our family too. My family's from the Midwest, her family's from Chicago, so Carhartt was an amazing opportunity. The key to my longevity and success at Carhartt was the fact that I had an amazing partner there, named Steve Carter, and he was the head of sales. And it's fair to say that he was really the heart and soul of the place as well, the culture. And after about 6 months to 9 months, he put his arm around me. He said, "Let's go have a beer." And he's like, "Tony, I love what you're doing. I love where you're going. I love what you're thinking, but you got to slow down. You got to slow down." And I looked at him, I go, "Wow, I thought I was going so slow." He goes, "I know it probably feels like it after where you were, but you got to slow down. You just do." And I said, "Great. What does that look like? What do I need to focus on? It? What do I, need to do differently?" And yeah, so it was go slow to go fast. Change was not a constant at Carhartt. Part of its longevity was the lack of change, right? In many respects. Some would argue, and it's fair to say they made changes throughout the years, but when you think about some of the seismic changes we were talking about making related to brand relevance in a changing world, that was pretty big, to make changes like that because it's so visible to so many people when you're changing things related to the brand, related to the product, related to distribution. And that's where we had to go a little slower to make sure we could explain the why. Take the time to explain why we're doing what we're doing, help bring people along as many as you can. And that was the key, to
So
the
let's
success.
go.
Of course, skipping the fact that we spent a ton of time with the consumer, man. I mean, that's where it all. In the end, I've learned that from Nike. I learned that from Under Armour. You got to go deep with the consumer. They dictate things.
It's amazing. I'm doing this series, The Great American Summer, which is what this is a feature for, and I'm featuring iconic companies. I've spoken with Cross, I've spoken with Zippo, I've spoken with Igloo, and every single one of the folks that I've had on have mentioned deeply their entrenched strategies and discussions relative to talking to their consumers, listening to their consumers, testing with their consumers, and just being in the trenches with their consumers. And you're
Yeah.
telling me Carhartt's no different.
Oh, absolutely. Paramount. I mean, and it's a discipline that, I'm at a different place. It's been 5 years, by the way, since I've been with Card. So I'm at a different place called Real Truck, and we're doing the same thing, and we're celebrating this summer with a campaign that, is all about AI stands for American Innovation. And we've got, because we manufacture most of what we sell here in the States to really reinforce, this great American summer, the pride that comes with manufacturing and making products for people's passions, their trucks, their Jeeps, their Broncos. That's what we do. It's been a similar consumer journey, but we had to go deep there too. So it's paramount. It's key. It's what I learned. It was the key to the driving change and adoption of that change at Carhartt. really making sure that, people knew that it wasn't Tony that was saying we needed to do this. It was the consumer. Look at it through the lens of the consumer, and we'll be good. We'll be right. Obviously, you've got some filters along the way, but be the voice of the consumer, and always have them top of mind and understand where they're at. People often ask, how does a lifestyle brand become a lifestyle brand? If you really are immersed in your consumer, you understand the rhythms of their life, you understand their life stages, you understand what they care about, when and why, and you reflect that, you reinforce that, and you celebrate it. And that's what we do. And that's what we did there for many, many years at Carhartt, to a lot of success.
So looking back, people know the logo, but they may not know the story. Carhartt's 1889. Share with us the
Yeah.
Carhartt story.
So when you join a place like Carhartt that was founded in 1889, one of the best things you can do is dive into the archives. Now, it's fair to say we didn't have one when I joined. It was developed while I was there. But we had a owner in Mark Valade who really revered the founder, Hamilton Carhartt. So Hamilton Carhartt founded the company. He was originally a furniture salesman, going horse and buggy door to door. Because remember, folks, 1889, you didn't have automobiles necessarily all over the place, right? And as he was doing his travel salesman work, and he would meet different workers, and one of the things he really noticed were railroad engineers and kind of the tattered clothes they would wear, and yet they were these revered, like we used to say, railroad engineers in the 1880s were like astronauts. Like they were driving these massive locomotives, right? They were like the futuristic, legends of their time. And he was like, they're not wearing the type of workwear that would, reflect their contributions, their positions, their, in society. So he set out to build better product. He said, they should have better work. They should be proud to wear it, and it should be reliable. It should last a long, long time under rough and brutal conditions. And he didn't succeed at first. He failed at first with the first product he developed. A few sewing machines in an attic in Detroit, and they took it out as he was selling it to the engineers. It didn't meet their needs necessarily at first. And you know what the key was? He listened to them. He didn't try to sell them on what they should need. He listened to what they wanted and needed, and he made adjustments. And his second line was a hit. And that was one of the many lessons, like, listen to the consumer. Our founder did. That's why this company exists today. If he hadn't listened, there would be no Carhartt. It would not have continued to succeed. There was no guarantee of success. Workwear didn't exist back then. People wore their old tattered clothing. That's what they did. It wasn't a category. He invented it. Along the lines of, Levi's was doing their thing out west as well. And you get, other brands that weren't far behind in Filson. And there are many, many other workwear brands that nobody knows today because they didn't survive. But, he listened to the consumer. He was inspired by the consumer. He revered the consumer. We would read his writings, and he held the consumer in very, very high regards. He was a champion and advocate for labor, which did not make him popular in Detroit in the 1900s. He did not share a table with some of the titans of industry, because Detroit in the early 1900s too was basically the Paris of the Midwest, but it was also kind of the center of industry for the United States. And because he was a champion and an advocate for labor, he didn't always get invited to the big parties and the balls, but he didn't care, because he looked at it as his role and his responsibility was to really advocate for hardworking people and make sure that they are well represented and well outfitted. And
Did he come from money, or how did he fund the company? Where did the sort of origins
yeah,
of the financial steadiness of his early days come from?
he didn't come from poverty, but he didn't come from great wealth. So he had to bootstrap it and build it and build the business. And that's what he did, And like I said, three sewing machines and three sewing machine operators, I believe, in the attic in Detroit is where it all started. And then it expanded rapidly into the 1920s, where he had mills and factories and cotton fields, because, the cotton was a critical component. So he was fully vertical and integrated. He had operations out west, he had operations overseas, and Cart was going through great growth and expansion and success, all driven by his brand centered promise towards hardworking men and women, because they did start to outfit women, even though women didn't really do a lot of the labor or laborious jobs back then in the same way that they do now. And then the Great Depression hit, and it almost sank the business again.
Interesting. When I talked to the folks at Cross, and Cross is an early 1800s brand, they at one point got down to 3 employees.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, it's easy to look and say, oh, well, they've been around for almost 180 years and it's always up and to the right. But that's also not the story of Carhartt. Carhartt had hit tough times.
Very hard, very tough times. In fact, he had to call on his sons. Some of his sons were running various areas of the enterprise in different parts of the country, and called them in. And not all of them thought it was worth doing. So one of the sons stayed out west and decided to pursue a different path in life. And unfortunately for him, the legacy of Carhartt, right? But he, at that time, it just didn't seem like it was something that was going to continue or succeed. But in the end, they were able to, you know, bolster the business, shrink it to survive it, and then build it back up. And that's what they did, through the 40s and 50s. But it wasn't like it was a rocket ship. It was growing, it was operating. Wiley, his son, ran it for a while, and then it ended up going to the husband of Wiley's daughter, Gretchen, and he ended up running the business before Mark Valade, who was his son, took over. So that's why the family name is Valade now and not Carhartt in terms of running the business, because Wiley's daughter, Gretchen, married Bob Valade, who then had Mark Valade, and Mark ended up running the business. And look, Mark was running a restaurant and a bar in Vermont after college. And his dad was like, son, you got to come back and you got to start working in the business. He's like, really, Dad? But in the end, he had to work in the business. He worked in factories, he worked in all the different locations, and he really got to know the business. And when the day came that he needed to run the business, because unfortunately his father passed away, he took the reins. And it's been under Mark's leadership that the business really grew from a very modest company around, again, I think maybe 150 to 250 million in sales when Mark took it over. They're between $1.6 billion and $2 billion, somewhere in that range. They're private, so they don't disclose their exact numbers, but let's just say that Mark gets a lot of credit, and he deserves the credit for leading the business all those years and all these years to such meteoric heights.
We know some things are made to look good, others are made to get the job done. That's Carhartt. They're made to do both. For generations, they built gear that people work hard, they get dirty, they need things to hold up. I mean, this is the Foundry Series backpack. It's just beautiful. First off, everyone's going to know it's a Carhartt. It's got the label on the front. It's got the branding on the back. Obviously very classy, done in a patch. I mean, this happens to be some embroidery that we did. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous embroidery. I'm really happy with it. But durable, water-resistant materials, dedicated laptop storage, organized compartments, great American summer, Carhartt. Go to the website, inkedstores.com, click the link, and check it out. I laugh at folks who talk about how more family businesses fail than succeed. That pivot is incredibly difficult when you're talking about a daughter to her husband. I mean, there's just so many different perils that a son could come back with the name and the egos. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. It is crazy. I don't remember the stat I used to when I was there, but very few businesses make it to the third generation, and almost no businesses make it to the fourth. So imagine that. And it's thrived under the fourth generation, which that's another reason to give Mark so much credit. And, now his kids are in the business, and I have no idea which way they're going or what they're going to do next. Mark gets all the credit for his ability to lead the way he did. He cared about all things in the business, but the two areas he would focus on were product and the brand marketing we would do as well. And in the end, they're one and the same, as everybody knows, right? A brand is its product, as is, the other way around. And he was really focused on relevance. He was focused on authenticity. He was focused on quality, making sure Carhartt always delivered on its promise. And if we ever veered from that course, he quickly ensured we course corrected to get back on course as well. Because he was always about, like, we got to keep our promise to hardworking people, respect their hard-earned dollar. You have to respect their hard-earned dollar, because in the end, they work really hard for every dollar they spend. And when they buy a car, they expect it to last and they expect it to deliver. And that's what we had to do.
When do you think Carhartt made the transition from becoming workwear to really part of the American culture?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It has a couple of different starting points. So long before I joined, Carhartt had a moment, and wisely Mark didn't chase the trend at the time, because used to say trends come and go, Carhartt always continues, right? And there was a trend in the 90s where hip hop embraced Carhartt. Some may remember that, some may not, but Carhartt was being worn by a lot of hip hop artists, rising and established. And that drew the attention of some folks over in Europe who came over and worked with Mark on a distributor relationship to open up the European market. And they bought up the marks for Carhartt overseas because back in the Great Depression, the founder Hamilton had to sell those marks to help raise money. And so the wisest move, his name's Edwin Fay, did was he bought those and handed them to Mark Valade and said, "These are yours, they're not mine." And built a relationship that still lasts today, and that's the Carhartt Work in Progress line. But in the beginnings, they were just distributing and selling regular Carhartt overseas in Europe. And then eventually, over time, they developed and built out a business model where there was another interpretation of Carhartt. And for a long time, that operated in Europe and Asia independently. Mark would oversee it and and be well aware of everything they were doing, but it was pretty independent because the ocean, kept the two worlds apart, so to speak. Carhartt wasn't really doing a lot of workwear business in Europe, had a very small operation. When I joined, the internet was flattening the earth pretty quickly, and we had to figure out a way to partner and work together and establish that. And Carhartt was committed to building a workwear business in Europe as well. And so there was a great team that was, working really hard to build the workwear side of it too. And so I would say that, it had an initial flash at the potential. And then while I was there, I would say it really started to take off in 2016, 2017,
Hmm.
where, our ability to help like translate Carhartt's brand promise from just brown duck, that's the famous fabric and cloth that you see on leather jackets and pants, translate that to a brand promise, and as we did that, we were also able to expand the audience. So Carhartt is for hardworking people was the idea. And so if you believed in the values of hard work, Carhartt's for you. And as we did that, we were able to expand on the definition also by leaning into we all take Instagram for granted now, but Instagram was this rising star in around 2012 or so. And after the Great Recession, people were really celebrating handmade, handcrafted, artisanal products, goods, foods, beers, right? The rise of craft beer. We leaned aggressively into those because those people built and made and created with their hands. So they had a complete connection to the original wares of Carhartt. We expanded the relevance of Carhartt beyond its core audience so that people who never thought Carhartt was for them, who never thought Carhartt was relevant, started to reach for Carhartt. And at the same time, we invested heavily in making sure that Carhartt was year-round relevant because Carhartt at the time was only an outerwear, workwear brand bought in the wintertime when it was cold. And we committed ourselves to saying the hardworking people work year round and we need to be there for them year round. And as we expanded the product assortment, that allowed us to get deeper into their closets. But as we expanded into these categories and denim had existed, but it wasn't a big category. T-shirts had existed, but it wasn't a big category. Sweatshirts and hoodies had existed. They weren't big categories. The beanie, the famous beanie, existed originally as a promo item, and it was now becoming a well-established item. So as we expanded into these categories, we expanded the relevance of our assortment too. So we built relevance for the product with audiences that never thought the brand was relevant to them. And we started to offer and introduce products that were far more relevant to far more people. And again, workwear, unless you're in Europe, because in Europe, workwear is a uniform and it's usually taken off right after work and people change into different clothes. But in America, workwear has quite honestly always been a style or an article of clothing that you can wear just about anywhere. Now people would say, I wear my nice Carhartt to church, and once I get it beat up and stained, I don't wear it to church anymore, right? But in America, workwear's always been kind of a lifestyle wear. Levi's was a workwear. Now Levi's is ubiquitous for denim and just lifestyle apparel, right? So it was always a natural progression and opportunity for us.
Is that how you modernize without abandoning your roots?
Yeah, because we expanded into other day parts in life. I guess you could say lifestyles or other, consumer audiences by just going deeper in our core consumer's closet. Like our core consumer wore jeans. They wore jeans. They just weren't wearing ours when I was at Card. They wore t-shirts. They weren't wearing ours.
And
They
and
were
maintain
wearing
the quality across the new clothing lines that you
exactly.
introduce, so they
Exactly.
understood that it was Carhartt and it meant for something. You didn't make a cheap T-shirt; you made
No.
a
We
workwear
made
quality.
we made the K87. We used to call it the toughest t-shirt you'll ever own because it usually was, and we tested it to make sure it delivered on that. We launched into the Carhartt Force, which was the first moisture wicking product lines, sweat wicking product, because more and more of those Men and women were relying on that type of product for their summer work, but the product they would wear was built for athletes, not for workers. So it wasn't tough enough or strong enough for job sites where you've got a lot of things that are going to rip it and shred it and tear it and destroy it. And we made a tougher version that still provided them with the ability to work in, hot weather. As we did all of that for hardworking men and women, that expanded the relevance because for a lot of people, the core product of like bibs, the coats, they come and go from a fashion perspective, but the coats by and large weren't overly relevant to a
Right.
lot of people. They just
And
weren't.
half the country, half 3/4 of the year.
Exactly. Now, as you get into some of those categories too, though, there was also an opportunity to make outerwear relevant for more people because the younger worker was saying, I love Cart, but you know what? I don't want to have to break it in. Like, I'm used to clothes being comfortable the day I buy them. I'm
Yeah.
not used to buying clothes that I have to break in. So, so we developed product lines that were,
By the way, you never know that if you don't talk to the client.
oh, we were always listening and
Right. But if
talking.
you're not talking to the
Absolutely.
client, you would never
No.
have that understanding. You would have just thought you were making Carhartt like you make Carhartt.
Exactly. Exactly. And and then people would say, what's our promise? Well, our promise needs to continue to be though that when you buy this product compared to other products, yeah, it may not be as durable as the firm hand duck product that you have to break in, but it's still going to be the most durable version of this product line compared to others on the market. That was always the promise. That had to be the promise.
You mentioned earlier that Hamilton Carhartt had to sell the marks to keep the company afloat. And then when they were repurchased back and given back, that it helped launch the work in progress line. I'm not sure I understand what the marks were that were sold. So I'd love to understand that.
The trademark. He sold his trademark in Europe and other parts of the world. He didn't have the rights to Carhartt in other parts of the world. So that's
So
something.
he had to repurchase those to market it around the world. He effectively only could sell Carhartt in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, other people could make and sell Carhartt, and there was nothing he could do about it in those parts of the world.
Wow.
And so Edwin Fade was great. One of the many things that he did that pretty incredible. He bought them all up, and then he literally handed them over to Mark Fallade and said, "These are yours; they're not mine." And developed and forged a long-lasting business partnership that still exists today between the two businesses. So it's pretty incredible.
Why do you think people feel such a strong emotional connection to Carhartt? I felt like we couldn't do this series if I didn't speak about Carhartt. And it's because people don't come to us and say, "Hey, I'm looking for workwear." They come to us and say, "I'm looking for
Hmm.
Carhartt."
Yeah, yeah, I
And
know.
that is an emotional connection.
Well, it was something we found out very early on. So when I joined, deep consumer research was happening, which led to a lot of the work we did. And one of the things we discovered was just, yeah, that deep emotional relationship that both the wearer had with cart as well as the family members or friends of the wearer. And and what's interesting about it is it came from a couple of places. First and foremost, again, original cart, you had to wear a long time to make it yours. You had to wear it in, right? It wasn't broken in when you bought it. So it was literally something that was handcrafted and molded to fit you and your lifestyle and what you do. And so there was an aspect of that made it very personal to people. And it also made it personal then to their loved ones. Like people would say, we fought over my dad's jacket when he passed away. Like they were all arguing over who would get the jacket. We were like, whoa, that's a big deal.
Yes.
And because it was so personal and it had so many memories, that were all wrapped up in it. And the other thing about those memories is the wearers would say, well, I can remember everything I built while wearing this jacket. I can remember, that I bought it when I started in the trade and I wore it until the end. And in that entire period of time was when we had kids and we raised those kids and we sent them to college and we accomplished these things in life. And so it became like a fabric of somebody's, like a timeline, right, for them in their lives. So, the longevity of Carhartt is a lot of what would create the emotional connections because so many emotional events would happen during the period of time and during the wearing of these products. And if you look at the work, we'd lean into that type of work heavily and always tell stories with real people. Everything that we did back in the time when I was there, we worked with real people who really wore Carhartt and did real work. And we would just raise them up and celebrate them and recognize those momentous events or accomplishments that they contributed to. Like, look, like I think we had a saying at one time, like The people who wear Carhartt, they're not playing inside the stadium, but they're the ones who build it. They're the
Yeah,
ones who
that's
run it.
cool.
They're the ones who open it, right? So there was a little bit like, because I brought in people from Nike and Under Armour. So we were always kind of leaning in on two things that we learned. One, at those places, you celebrate the athlete, you raise them up, they're heroes. Here, we made the worker the hero. Nobody was making workers the hero before. Like the world was telling people, don't go in the trades, go to college. Well, I think that tune's being changed a little bit now.
A little bit.
But back in the day, and so we were like, no, 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 let's celebrate these people. And then let's recognize what they contribute to and do. They build bridges, they build skyscrapers, they do all of these amazing things in
Yeah.
Carhartt.
But that's got to be a tough balance too now because you got the athletes who, you're saying they don't play, but they're walking in Carhartt and walking out in
Yeah.
Carhartt now.
But because they want to be recognized and identified as the Carhartt type of athlete, the
Well, they
Carhartt
also
type
probably
of
want to be
person.
recognized as when I put Carhartt on, it means that I'm a hard worker.
Yeah, it's the lunch pail. Like
It's how I identify. Last question on the heritage and history. We'll get into some fun stuff on the behind the scenes of Carhartt. But is there anything that you felt over the years people have misunderstood about the brand?
there were always, there were always things that we were kind of navigating. For instance, oftentimes people would misunderstand Carhartt being adopted by people. And what I mean by that, Carhartt would be adopted by hipsters, in Brooklyn. Carhartt would be adopted by celebrities. Carhartt would be adopted by certain athletes, right? Because they wanted to portray to their audiences that they were either, salt of the earth or hardworking or, whatever thing they were trying to lean into. And politicians would wear Carhartt too, from both sides of the aisle. And oftentimes people thought we were picking sides or, participating in this. And I used to say the first rule of hipsters is you don't market to hipsters. And we didn't, not once. Hipsters don't wear what gets marketed to them. They
That's so
adopt what they pick and choose on their own, of their own making, based on what reflects their views on society, culture, and life at the time. When it comes to celebrities, at least while I was there, outside of hiring a few celebrities like Jason Momoa to be our director and producer for commercials, we typically didn't hire. Now it's changed, but we didn't hire celebrities as spokespeople and pay them. They adopted Carhartt and wore it. Movies would use Carhartt, and we would say we want to be the uniform of hard work in movies and shows, but we didn't have to pay to be that because they would know that if I don't have Carhartt, people aren't going to recognize this individual in the way we need the character to show up. The Kardashians were putting beanies on their kids back in the day. We didn't tell the Kardashians to do that.
they were
Probably wouldn't have been on
they
brand.
were they were leveraging your brand. You weren't leveraging their brand.
They were adopting it for what it stood for because that's what they wanted to portray at the time. And that's
And
fine. I
Carhartt
mean,
and
that's up to
everyone
them.
knows what and everyone knows
That's
what
up to them.
Carhartt portrays.
Yeah. Yeah, there's senators from the, Republican side, and there have been presidents from the Democratic side that have worn Carhartt too. You know, we don't outfit them. We don't great.
Yeah, they
We
buy it in the
and
store like we do.
so people would always try to ask me like, well, who do you support or what do you believe in? And I'd say, look, nobody asks for your voting record or your registration when you show up on a job site. They just ask you, can you do the job and can you do it well? So in the end, we vote for hard work and we believe in hard work, and that's what we stand for. And, one of the things we used to recognize too is Carhartt's one of those great, connectors. Like that mindset can permeate all different types of people. And it's one of those commonalities that people can embrace. So
Beautiful rain defender full zip hoodie from Carhartt. It is just an everyday piece. It's the type of piece where you grab it without thinking. If you're going to work, if you're on the lake, it's durable, it's comfortable, it's useful. It's Carhartt. It's beautiful. Great American Summer. Check it out. Go to the website right now. Click the link. Thanks. I love it. We're talking to Tony Ambroza. He was the chief brand officer for Carhartt for over a decade. Currently, he is the chief growth officer for Real Truck.
Yeah, chief growth officer, Real Truck. So I
Back
have
to
product.
back to your Under Armour roots of grinding and going fast.
Oh yeah, private equity owned. It's been a heck of a run and learning experience. We've got product management that I get to lead with a great design team. We have marketing in our e-commerce and direct to consumer business in total. And well, look, we're building great products for people who want to pursue life on four wheels, is what we say. And there's a lot of fun adventure there, and a lot of those folks wear Carhartt. So I've had a chance to stay connected to this consumer audience for a long time.
28 years in business.
Long
That's
time.
not that's nothing to sneeze at.
No, very proud of everything we do here and make here, and we've uh, we've had a good run. We've got a lot of new products we've launched this year, and a lot more to come.
So behind the scenes at Carhartt, how does a product become a classic, and which and how do you decide which products get shelved?
Oh boy, that was typically Mark Valade was very involved in a lot of those decisions, as well as the head of product. But the consumer votes. How does a product become a classic? The consumer votes. One of the hardest things to do that Carhartt was to ever replace a product or drop a product too, because
I imagine.
Carhartt product had the longest life cycle in apparel that I've ever experienced. It was incredible. So the consumer would vote. Products like the Active Jack, products like the BO1, they were amazing classics and still exist today and have, I think the BO1's over 100 years old or something like that. So the consumer votes and keeps voting. Do you have to make tweaks, adjustments? Absolutely. You have to keep it relevant in today's world. But yeah, listen to the consumer and it's not hard to figure out.
What was the product life cycle in launch like? Was there a lot of testing that went in before launching a product?
There was a lot of testing as we started to expand and offer lot of new products. There would be a lot of testing that would go into it to ensure that it would deliver on the functional aspect of the product, the utility of it, and the durability. Like for instance, buy anything from Carhartt and you're going to find pockets that actually work. Unlike some brands or products, right? You're going to find deep pockets that actually you can put things in. You're going to find fits that are made for movement, so easy to move around in as well. And from a durability standpoint, if it doesn't outlast the other product you have, should probably give Carhartt a call because they typically will do something about that. So
Yeah.
that's really what it stood for.
So in your personal life, you've been involved in brands that have gone really fast, and then you mentioned that Carhartt slowed you down a little bit. Now you're going fast again. What are some of the bigger leadership lessons that you took away from your decade plus at Carhartt?
Well, you really have to understand and assess the situation you're in at a business, right? And make sure you understand the need or the relevance for action and speed and the appetite for it as well. And then take the time to define the background and the reasons why. And really start with your peer group, on the leadership team and your own team, and then from there as well. But mission critical, really assess and understand, the pace and speed of the culture and their readiness or their desire for change, and then take the time to define the why behind everything you do. And of course, always start with the consumer in that work. Those are the lessons I've, taken away from my experiences. Whenever I've missed a beat or messed up along the way, and I've messed up plenty, I think who hasn't, right? As you work long enough, you are
Oh, for sure.
plenty of scars to prove it. You just don't take enough of the time. You get you jump in and you feel like, okay, got to go, got to act, got to do. And also some of it can be driven by, and I got to be able to reinforce, the value of the work I and my team does, right? As well in a new organization. And the key is slow down, take the time to understand. Now you may have to go fast, but first make sure you understand the situation on the ground. So that's been a key to life now. Learned a lot from it. Cart taught me that.
All right, some fun sort of rapid fire questions. Just curious, and we'll end here. Favorite Carhartt product of all time?
Oh, the BO1 for sure. The double front pants, I still wear them to work in. I love the fact that they're double front. And whenever I get a chainsaw out, I like to clear brush in the fall. I know that my knucklehead self won't, cut my leg out off because I've got the double fronts to protect me.
All right, duck canvas or denim?
Duck, duck. I've got lots of denim, but you duck when you get it formed and fitted just right, it's like butter.
Favorite Carhartt advertisement of all time?
Ooh, that's a good one. Probably the one that I'm most proud of is the launch of the Force product line. So the Carhartt Force product line. I did that work with an agency that had a few folks from my Wyden and Kennedy partnership days when I worked at Nike who helped us bring that spot to life. Loved it. Loved it. The creative mind behind all of this. He gets a lot of credit. He does amazing work still today. He's running his own little shop. But yeah, that would be the one. The most interesting and fun one was the historical piece we did with Jason Momoa. And the one that probably got the most reactions and responses to it was the piece, The Canvas of My Life by Jason Momoa, where he did his own video. and through the lens, his life through the lens of Carhartt as well. Because most people don't know, he grew up in Iowa on a farm surrounded by Carhartt.
I know you mentioned the Kardashians earlier as a celebrity sighting with the cap on their kids. Are there any celebrity sightings that you saw along the way that made you sort of stop in your tracks?
In a good way or
Well, you decide. No, just in a way like you're like, whoa, they're wearing Carhartt. Like what?
yeah. That's a great question. I don't.
Or Tony, is it as simple as
I mean,
everybody sort of along the way has worn Carhartt because they all want to project the image?
yes, so many people have, and so many people are seen wearing it so often. Some folks will get really wrapped around an axle over somebody wearing it and showing up in it. And I was always like, guys, I get it, and we should always be aware of it to make sure that people don't think that we're trying to sell out, because that's not what we're trying to do. We can't control who adopts the brand and who doesn't, and who wears it and who doesn't either. All we can control is how we continue to communicate, position the brand and the products we make and sell into the marketplace. So you know, you would respond and react, but ultimately, like I became so accustomed to it eventually, which was crazy because one of the things I did not share with you at the beginning. So when I joined Cart, I Google Alerts. I think everybody knows them well now. I set up Google Alerts because I was like, okay, so I'm joining. Let me start to understand like what kind of news or coverage or like shows up for Cart. And for the first 2 years, I had this mantra for the team. I said, we have to change this about this brand because this is not good. And what I would see in my Google alerts every morning was a suspect last seen wearing brown Carhartt looking jacket. And so that was kind of the running joke. It was like, guys, like what we got to change this. And look, that nobody sees that anymore. But that's what you used to see. Like
Interesting.
Carhartt would be a descriptor of somebody who would like hold up a liquor store or steal a car or something like that, or hold somebody up in an alley somewhere, right? And so, yeah, it's hilarious now, but at the time I was like, boy, we got to fix this. So,
Last question. Is there a day that you can remember back at your time as the, head of brand for Carhartt where, that was the most memorable? When someone brings it up, you just get warm about it?
yeah, I would say when the brand turned 125 years old, or I should correct myself back then. Mark would say years young. Um, So at 125, we celebrated the anniversary with some pretty cool collaborations and partnerships. And it was also, a very challenging and difficult time emotionally because that amazing, person that I mentioned, Steve Carter, who really helped me, succeed and have the longevity I did at Cart. He was battling cancer, which eventually did beat him. But in the midst of battling cancer that year, we were able to bring him back for some different things we do to review collaboration products to make sure they were on brand and like we wanted to do them. And one of the collaborations we got to do was we made a craft beer with a brewery in Michigan, New Holland Brewery, and it was called the Woodsman, and it was aged in like these bourbon barrel wood chips too to give it a little bit of that smoothness and that little bit of bourbon profile too. And he cheated a little bit on his treatment plan and joined the tasting with us. And I still have pictures today, and when I see those pictures, I have nothing but warm thoughts about it as well. So yeah, that's one of those memories that'll carry forever.
Oh, that's crazy. It always comes back to people, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Look, everything about it. I mean, we all fret and worry about spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations and whatever else, but in the end, it's always about the people. They make the ride what it is, and by there's no doubt. And there's a group of us that still stay connected today who all were friends because of Carter, from those years as well.
Tony, this was a great conversation, a beautiful chat. I really appreciate you coming on to talk about the company that you were part of for over a decade, Carhartt. And yeah, I look forward to watching Real Truck and its success over the next decade as well.